And we are now, oder ich werde es jetzt auf Deutsch weitermachen.
I'm going to continue in German. We are looking forward to our final keynote. Sophie Klieber is our final speaker. She's already here. And she is at the crossroads between health, technology, sustainability, and spaces. She's a designer with plenty of experience, and she's head of Spaces User Experience at Google. She is designing the way we interact with physical spaces. I think we have all made the same experience over the past few months, that we are experiencing physical spaces in a new way. Meeting at trade fairs, meeting at conferences, just meetings in general have changed completely. So we look forward to hearing what Sophie has to say about these topics and about her work.
Would be great if you could join us here.
Hi.
Yeah, super. Great.
I'm here.
Super. Can
Awesome.
you hear us?
Thank you so very much. I know I'm... Yes.
Wonderful. The
I
floor
can
is
hear
yours.
Let's give her a hand. Come
Yeah.
on, guys.
I know, it's late. It's wonderful. Such interesting topics. So thank you for having me. And yeah, like as announced, I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts about the future on the physical spaces that we live in. So if we could start the slides, that would be wonderful. Super, thank you. So next slide. The direction. I can see the slides. Are they rolling or?
We do see the slides. There's a slide that's blue and says ambient computing now here.
Super. Okay. So, like I said, now I see it too. Yes, this is the slide I love the most of all the slides that I love a lot. So my name is Sophie. I work at Google and I'm the director of Spaces UX at Google. What I will tell you about today is not Google's view, it's my view. So screw the big companies, the real brains up in here. And I want to talk a little bit about physical spaces and what I think is going to happen with them. So if we go to the next slide. I truly believe that we are in the midst of a human-machine interaction revolution, and that's the ambient computing revolution. So there's three things that are coming together. If you go to the next slide, the first thing that's coming in that we've known about and talked about for a long time is machine learning. Add to that now the thing that started around, I'm going to say like, early 2000s, which is the thing we call intuitive user interfaces. So this means that for the first time, we are able to communicate with computers on what I call on our own terms. So instead of us learning a programming language or learning an input language or learning an interface, the computer learns us. Natural language processing, gestural interfaces, all of these are the intuitive user interfaces that now work on human terms, not on computer terms. And lastly, if you go to the next slide, the third thing that is coming in is the field of effective computing. It's been coined by Rosalind Picard at the MIT, and it means that systems and devices can recognize, interpret, process, and simulate human effects. So what would happen if computers could understand how we feel? I've talked a lot about this in the past. If we go to the next slide, what I want to talk about is what if physical spaces could detect, decode, and react to its inhabitants' emotions. And we're actually not that far off. If we go again, one more slide, we already have invited computers and intelligent computing into our most sacred safe spaces. We're inviting smartness into our home, this is smartness that doesn't just manage. This is a personality that we're bringing into our home. She might be called Alexa, she might be called Bixby, he might be called Google, but we are bringing personalities into our home that help us not only, set the timer, but also, help us with our ups and downs. Research has also proven that the physical environment can have a tremendous influence on well-being. So the home as a private safe space heavily invites this type of individualized personalization, the idea that the space actually has a personality. An emotional balance is very clear, results in improved physical health. If we go to the next slide, where we are very far off is the idea of office spaces. So office spaces still look like this picture on the right. But here's the kicker when we think about the spaces that we inhabit for the other half of the time. We used to inhabit for the other half of the time, might go back to or might find a completely different world. In the age of thought work, there is no single metric of productivity. Back in the days, we could say, we produce 500 bricks a day. We painted the room red. Now we produce 560 bricks a day. That's a clear productivity increase. In thought work, studies, researchers, scholars have broken their heads about trying to figure out one single metric of productivity. What we can do, though, is we can find factors that enable strong teams that then enable them to perform on their individualized productivity goals. And as a study of 2012, Project Aristotle has found psychological safety is one of the biggest drivers for modern productivity. And we haven't even begun to think about how office design, the spatial design in itself, can support the traits of psychological safety along with other traits like dependability, structure and clarity, meaning of work and impact. So 3 things need to happen in order for us to make these spaces more intelligent and clever. Let's go to the next slide. The first thing is that the passive environment has to awaken. And that comes from 2 sides. So the first side is, if you go to the next slide, is ourselves. At this moment in time, all of us carry a cloud around personal kind of like mood and traits and feelings around us. We have in our cloud preferences about how we like our environment. That could be from your smart thermostat, it could be from your smart light bulbs. We have information about our relationships. We have information about something as effervescent as taste from platforms like Pinterest or things where we actually, kind of dream up our tastes. Purchases, we have information about our health, career, and, the music we listen to can also give us a big clue about our mood. So would we as users, and the power always has to lie with the users, grant an environment access to these things? We would already learn a lot about the user. But the real data point is ourselves. So if you go to the next slide, what would happen if a room could hear and see? So a room has a camera and has a microphone, and through hearing and seeing, any technology can detect its inhabitants' human emotions. Emotions are communicated primarily through facial expressions, but also very, very strongly through voice and through gestures. So imagine a room could hear and a room could see. And then if you go to the next slide, this space could then also talk and show or adapt to whatever is happening in the space, right? So speakers and display technology actually allow for the space to react to its inhabitants. And the more integrated, if you go to the next slide, we sometimes think that the solution is just hanging a screen in it and then we're done. But the more integrated the technology with the actual physical space, the more potential for magic. This is an example from the retail space Kiki, and it really has a projection in a very fine way, interacting with a wall that has physical elements and projection elements in it. And this is the type of room or the type of setup we want to get to. We want to make sure that these things don't feel like two different things, but they feel very integrated. If we go to the next slide, there's actually a bunch of subtle kind of like, change agents that usually are passive. They only react to when we make an active adjustment, but they could awaken and become more active. Light has a tremendous influence on mood. Sound has an influence on mood. A lot of experiments are being done specifically in retail with scent. Air quality plays a big, big role and can be regulated in all kinds of directions. And below that, you have the row of things that are a little bit harder to change on a whim, but are also very important and big players. So color, nature, especially in office design, biophilic design is a very, very big deal. And it's been proven that if there's nature in the offices, people are happier. Materiality, how things feel. You know, we talked a lot about games today and virtual worlds, but how things feel matters. And then the overall comfort that a space gives us is kind of the sum of its part. So now we have part one, is the inactive environment becomes active. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if we would have all a sentient support system? So what could that look like? If you go to the next slide, there's a lot of individual parts, and slowly we're going to put them together. So there's been a lot of studies done around light and lighting to support you throughout your day. While all studies agree that natural light is the best, there are many studies with dynamic indoor lighting that significantly increase happiness as well as work accuracy and productivity. So this means throughout the day, the lighting in a room changes and supports you kind of through this mid-afternoon slump, supports you through your breaks, changes a little bit. Experiments aim also to determine what the optimal light is for productivity. But what they also find is that sometimes personal preferences do vary greatly, and what fits one person doesn't fit the other person, because we all are different feeling human beings. So if we go to the next slide, I mentioned this experiments with scent. There's a couple of experiments with scents, and anyone who's ever like even remotely dabbled in aromatherapy has heard all the different scents that either calm you, like lavender, or bring you up, like geranium and things like that. So there's a lot of experiments with the idea of when scent is infused, how does that help you throughout your day? Difficulty with scent is that it actually is the one sensor that triggers very, very deep into the subconscious, into the memory state. So it is, again, a very personalized and individualized thing. But let's put a couple of these things together if you go to the next slide. So if we think about in a setting where many people are, what could that actually mean and how could that actually be coming together? Because these studies are very interesting when you think about a one-person home, but that is never the case. This is some images of the Agnelli Foundation, the headquarters in Turin. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to build technology that basically follows you around that your individual comfort bubble follows you around. So your preferences with lighting, your preferences with temperature and air quality will basically come with you as you move through the building. There's another building, it's the Edge building in Amsterdam that Deloitte is, I think, in that building, and they've reported actually a 60% decrease in absenteeism and a significant increase in job application and talent retention because they've also made a smart building. So take that with a grain of salt. Let's go to the next slide and see what this looks like on the interface side. So this is kind of the floor plan, and this is the airflow, and the idea of potentially clustering people not only by, you know, what they're working on and how they're working together, but also by their preferences. so that you save energy that way and make sure that you optimize for comfort. If you go to the next slide, let's take this a little bit further. This is a co-working space in Brooklyn. It's called The Wing, and it's a co-working space specifically for women. What this means is that, you know, the ambience is targeted to a certain audience. The seating and the furniture is actually adjusted to an average height of women. That all, including a very bright lighting, creates a feeling of comfort, creates a feeling of safety and a feeling of belonging. And this space also has its own scent, which is described as neutral, cheerful, and airy. And this is kind of like a complete, not only branding, but also a complete adjustment of a space to its inhabitants. You go to the next slide. There's individual furniture that can actually help with equity. So taking these ideas a little bit further, how can a space then really help? This is a table. It's from David Rose. He works on enchanted objects. And this table signifies by the lights on the table how many speaking minutes an individual person has. So when a person speaks, their part of the table lights up, and you slowly see who's speaking, who's listening, and whether or not you have a balance in the room of all the voices heard. So if you really think about emotionally intelligent spaces, can spaces actually increase the equity that we have in a room, increase the ability to have all voices heard? Or can they even maybe help with conflict resolution by changing temperature and lighting when conflict arises? The next point, the last point in this section, there is a big field, primarily in architecture and in the field of at the interface of architecture and technology, that is called healing design. So it's mostly applied to hospitals right now, but it's the idea that the environment can be designed and can be adaptable in such a way that it actually supports human healing. And that has to do with the way that the space is laid out, the hard parts of the space, the walls, the physical parts, as well as the interactive parts in it, like lighting, air quality, temperature, and so forth. So that's the second part, right? A space that actually supports your well-being. And what we can't leave out here is that in the third part, there might be an opportunity for spaces actually to get a personality. If we go to the next space, architects firmly, or if they go to the next slide, architects firmly believe that we experience spaces like we experience people. They have a personality and they have a certain brand. And this is indeed, if we go to the next slide, a very brandable idea, right? So if we think about personality design, this is probably the most recognized young typology of personalities. It's old, but it still holds true. And the interesting thing is when we design personalities as designers, as brand makers, as taste makers, we don't design personalities, we really design relationships, right? Because we always design a personality with relationship to the person, the recipient. But if we look at this, let's play that through in a couple of scenarios. So I'm going to invite you to come on a journey with me and think about a couple of types of rooms or spaces and what they could be like and feel like. So let's go to the next one. What if a space was a little bit of a hipster friend, right? On the young personality wheel, this could be an artist, this could be an innocent, this could be a hero, young, eccentric, excited, creative, eager, scattered. So here's what a room like that could feel like. How exciting to see you. The room is absolutely delighted to be here for you. It's optimistic, talkative, and eager, maybe a little too eager at times, to show you all its latest innovations. It's a very musical space that frequently surprises you with new eccentric sound and color compositions. Sometimes the room glitches a little bit, buzzing, and it's definitely not very rational, but it's always, always exciting. You get the idea? Let's try another one. Let's go to the next slide. What if a room was a little bit like your hippie fairy godmother? The space welcomes you with open arms, warm, bright, free. This space invites you to truly be yourself, authentic and genuine, and you are free to explore at your own will. The space feels fresh, relaxed, maybe a bit careless. Whatever you need, the space will provide in abundance. All you gotta do is ask. And let's try one more. We go to the next slide. This is my favorite. I'm a big fan of Big Hero 6. So I wonder what a space would feel like if it was Big Hero 6. I would think it was warm, soft, understanding, curious, a little bit imperfect, but also very present and here for you. Warm and cuddly, cushioned sound, warm crackle, soft lights. You're safe here. Calm and protecting, the room smiles at you, loving and present, a bit playful. Was that a wink? There, the space whispers to you a secret just for your ears, then retreats with a warm sigh and leaves you to explore. Free with childish curiosity, you set out to follow the scent of freshly baked. So if we go to the next slide, as this stays in the hypothetical space, and as I am closing out, I ask you, what would your space feel like? So close your eyes or leave them open, but think of a space. Could be your living space, workspace, studio, space of retreat. Settle. You got the space? Now, open the door and step in. What does the space look like? Is it light or dark? Warm or fresh? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? Now move around. What does the space pick up from you? How does it react to your movement, your emotions? Does it communicate with you? How? Does it have a voice, a sound, a feel? And most importantly, how does it make you feel? Next slide. This is some of the things I'm thinking about. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. I hope this was fun. It was very much fun for me. Thank you.
Wow, that's impressive, Sophie. So, so what was your room like?
Oh God, I have a very small Berlin Zimmer that's like just a long tunnel, really. I call it the tunnel.
Okay.
And I'm always thinking, hopefully I'm not getting tunnel vision in there. Or maybe it's doing the exact opposite to me because it's so small and so tunnely that I think of it as like a way to amplify everything. So I don't know. But when you did this, Sophie, I entered a space that's very bright, white furniture, and the first thing the room does is play the exact type of music that I wanted to play, that I'm feeling for. Like Pandora turns spatial Pandora, right?
Hey, perfect. That's like a room I want to hang out in too.
I want that. I love music. I have so many speakers and headphones and what have you. So I'm a music dude. So, and your music. Let's have some music real quick. Just an interstitial, Sophie, before we're wrapping up and asking you a few more questions. Because the music is good. So I think I would like to ask a few questions, maybe have questions from the audience for Sophie.
Yes.
That'd be great. Any questions from you guys? I'll ask a question. I have a question. Sophie, you've probably seen a few talks today. How do you link and explicitly link the role of playfulness to what you're doing, to the work you're doing? You mentioned a few things. One of the reasons why we invited you is we talked about equity and how people can have a voice through being heard by computing. And I really wonder, how can we encourage creativity and play? What's your take on that? How do you link your stuff to, yes, health, well-being, but also maybe to the first part at Bizplay where we talked about, the role of play?
Yeah. I think the world would be nothing without play. And I think if everything that we do feels like play, we basically won. And I think that, as you saw in the last couple of examples that we together played through, I think in order to understand what could be and to define what we would want to be, play is a really, really important tool first to unleash that creativity in this new field, right? It's very easy to go dark on artificial intelligence. And it's, yes, we always have the ex machina in our head where everything's just robots are gonna take over and we're doomed. But if you really want to think about the opportunities, I think, that's why I like to go Big Hero 6, and I'd like to go and think about what if we could actually think it up the way that we would want to. In the physical applications, the real life applications, I think some of that you've seen, like we're not there yet with the world around us, but I could imagine that play or playfulness and also a certain whimsical kind of reaction of a space can actually help with a lot of conflict resolution, a lot of dissolution of tension, right? And that's where the personality design comes in. Do you design spaces to be playful and to kind of get you out of things? At what moment do you go too far with a design that's just goofy or a space that's just goofy? So I think that there's a huge potential for whimsical kind of design of something that previously was really just in the background that slowly comes up now.
Maybe even, Sophie, if I may chime in real quick, what I was just thinking is whimsical can be a way to take out the potential threat that technologies pose to people. Yeah. If it's just like, it's a silly approach and the tech would say, hey, what's up, Steffen? You seem to be kind of hungover today, like I had to drink too many last night. Did you see what I'm saying? Like, it's probably a stupid example, but like I think whimsical can be an entry point for us to think of computing less as a rigid system, but rather something in the way that you describe it. I've been thinking a lot about adaptation, right? So adaptation is key, and adaptation also means to express emotionality, also in the way the computing powers approaches us. So that we're very responsive, we're smiling, we're laughing, we're making stupid jokes, pulling someone's leg. So maybe that's one way to do it.
Steffen, I think you're onto something that the industry is also onto. So it's a very important point, and it's far from stupid. If you look at personality design and you look at the design of the voice assistants, one of the first things that all of them could do is tell you a joke. Or Alexa, sing me a song. From version 0, she had a song that she sang, and it was totally goofy. It was, I think, some sort of cowboy song, and just really.
My kids do this. I will tell you, my kids. Sorry to interrupt, but yesterday we were driving in the car, a day before yesterday, and my kids being used to not Alexa. I'm not going to mention the other product. Doesn't matter. And they were sitting in the car, and the car also has voice recognition. And they said, hey, X, sing a song. And it just didn't do it. And they were like, oh, this is boring.
Yeah.
This is crap technology here.
Or the small children that are in front of the television and
They do
making this, no?
They do this, exactly. They do this all the time. Sorry, I interrupted, Sophie. Please go ahead.
No, it's awesome because there's a reason for that. And you said it, adaptation is the main reason here because what we do in design often is, in visual design or in interface design, it's called skeuomorphism. So we make things look like things that we know. When the first iPad came out, remember how the gaming center had like a felt background? There's absolutely no felt in digital, right? But we made it look like something so people would understand, this is where I go to get my games. Or the books thing looked like a bookshelf with actual wood grain. And in personality design, we do a similar thing. It's called anthropomorphism. So we make these personalities, these voice assistants, we give them personality. So we continue to interact with them. And the funnier they are, that has another side effect. It makes us forgive them. It makes us forgive the V1s to be glitchy, to not know. That endearing part of it is actually a very, very important driver, to your point, for adaptation and for continuing to engage.
Yep. So that will raise well-being if we feel that the machine is more emotional, and maybe it also has glitches.
And that it can help you in some situations. I really like the table you were showing. I think this is great to have this in the office space. Then you can see how the people are interacting and whether there's a need to address somebody because he didn't say a word for an hour, so maybe there's something wrong. Or no, so I think there's much potential for that.
Lots of potential. So I think we need to wrap it up. Thank you very much, everyone. Sophie, super thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
We also need to wrap up this day.
Das war Meets Creatables.
Das war Bizplay Meets Creatables. Wir müssen unbedingt hinweisen auf den tollen Workshop, der jetzt stattfindet.
Das mache ich gleich. Erstmal vielen Dank an die Veranstalter und die ganzen Unterstützer, dass sie uns ermöglicht haben, unter diesen besonderen, doch sehr besonderen Bedingungen diesen Tag hier veranstalten zu können. Mir war es eine große Freude, Sie heute durch den Tag zu begleiten. Ich hoffe, wie es mir ging, ich habe ganz viele neue Anregungen, Impulse, Inspirationen bekommen. Ich hoffe, es ging Ihnen genauso. Die werde ich jetzt mitnehmen nach Berlin. Und für diejenigen, du hast es schon erwähnt, es gibt einen Creative Snack, ne?
Ja, ein Creative Snack.
Und zwar ist
Frieda sich so ausgedacht, super Begriff, schön.
Genau, und zwar Frieda Preu, sie arbeitet als User Experience Consultant für das Spiegel-Institut in Stuttgart und das Teile vom Creatables-Team werden einen Design-Sprint anbieten, jetzt hier gleich nach der Konferenz für alle Leute, die noch hier sind und vor Ort aktiv werden wollen. Einen Design-Sprint zur Entwicklung von nachhaltigen Innovationen.
Das kann man exakt so sagen, ja. Also wenn ich jetzt schon mal ein bisschen teasern darf, es geht um eine Rede eines CEO, die der aber in der Zukunft hält, rückblickend. Ja, und zwar um da zu beschreiben, wie er als CEO, also teilnehmenden spielenden CEO oder die CEOine, möchte ich mal sagen, ne? Wie die auf diesem Weg zur Nachhaltigkeit eigentlich hingekommen sind. Und das wird die Frieda dann aber noch gemeinsam auch mit Sven und der Andrea Buchholz von der MFG, Philipp Brigley und Jasmin Henrich-Kirchhübel. Ich spiele auch eine kleine Rolle, habe da aber die letzten Wochen mich eher mit dem Kuratieren des Programmes beschäftigt und vor allem die lieben Kolleginnen und Kollegen haben das jetzt toll weiterentwickelt. Aber das Ziel ist eben einfach mit verschiedenen Methoden Nachhaltigkeit als Innovationschance in die Mindsets der Unternehmen auch reinzukriegen. Das ist ein explizites Ziel, wenn ich das auch am Schluss der Creatables noch sagen darf. Uns ist es ein Riesenanliegen. Wir wollen diese Methode rausbringen in die Welt. Wir wollen Unternehmerinnen und Unternehmer hier auch einladen, mit uns gemeinsam zu entdecken, wie man eben Nachhaltigkeit als Chance begreifen kann und nicht als Bedrohung und wie wir auch damit gemeinsam einen Impact haben können und wie wir eben Kreativität und die gerade mit Sophie besprochene Playfulness da reinkriegen, denn wir glauben alle als Creatables-Team und auch als Bizplay-Team, dass Games und Play einfach ein Schlüssel sind, die Herzen der Menschen da draußen zu kriegen und dass das sehr viel auch mit Motivation und Engagement zu tun hat, wie man eben jemanden reinkriegt. Und ich fand für mich sehr wichtig, vielleicht als Schluss mein persönliches Schlusswort, ich finde es sehr wichtig, dass wir dabei gleichzeitig eben immer auch auf die anderen Kreativmedien schauen und die Musik uns beschwingt sozusagen und die Filmemacherinnen und die Geschichten, die wir hören, uns weitertreiben, uns die Augen öffnen und in den Herzen auch stecken bleiben. Und das ist eben, und Games letztendlich ja auch, ich sag mal, eigentlich wie so ein Gesamtapparat sind. Ne? Die haben Stories, die haben Mechaniken, die haben Musik, die haben Emotionen. Deswegen funktionieren sie auch für viele Leute so gut. Und das wäre mir ein großes Anliegen, dass ihr auch hier im Publikum und da draußen online auch rausgeht und eben sagt, ich will was bewegen und wenn ihr Lust habt auf uns als Creatables-Methode, dann seid mit dabei und schreibt uns an über die MFG. Wir freuen uns sehr. Vielen Dank.
Super. Mir bleibt jetzt eigentlich nur noch, mich von Ihnen zu verabschieden und ganz im Sinne des heutigen Nachmittags, also das Nachhaltigkeitsziel Nummer 3, Gesundheit und Wohlbefinden, zu sagen, bleiben Sie alle gesund und guter Dinge. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Dankeschön.
Ja, bitte spielt noch ein bisschen. Please.